first thing we need to do to get started is to find a needle that's going to work. You can look through whatever you have around. If you have some random needles around, you're going to look for something that has a bigger eye and somewhat of a sharp point that's not too wide or too blunt. If it's too wide or too blunt, when you go through your fabric, it'll leave a hole in your fabric. So you want it to be sharp with as big an eye as you need, but not too big. So if you don't have any around and you need to purchase some, this is a great little pack from Dritz. It sizes 1 through 5 in a little variety pack. There's 12 of them. And they work pretty well. You can see I've used some of them already. I think I've used the ones with the bigger eyes. So those would be the size 1s, would be the ones with the biggest eyes. And size 5 would be the smallest. Here's a whole pack of size 5 needles. And here's a pack of size 7. You can see that those eyes are a little bit smaller. I can use a 7 sometimes for embroidery floss, but a 5 works much better. And maybe a 3 down to a 1 also. Those are actually probably the best to use when you're just starting out because it makes threading much easier. This is a pack of Bowen needles. This is a variety of size 1 through 10 embroidery needles. These are real nice, well-made needles from France. They're a little more expensive, but they are very nice. The edges of the eyes are very, very sharp so that you can get your thread through there very easily. These are great needles. And these are some sashiko needles. They come from Japan. I got these from Olympus. Sashiko is a specific kind of Japanese type of embroidery, but the needles are a really good size that work also very well with regular embroidery floss. They've got a nice big eye. This one has a pack of a long one and a short one. It's got a nice sharp point. So these are great ones to use. I am going to use one of these. I'm going to just set it right here so it's ready when I have my floss. So here is a pack of new floss, and usually at the top, if you have the label facing, you can find the top, and usually, if all goes well, there's a little strand sticking out already, and that's the one you're going to want to pull. There's another, the other end of it is inside of here, and if you pull that, you're kind of going to go backwards, and you could end up raveling your thread, so you want to pull from this side. And when I'm doing embroidery, I like to get about an 18-inch piece of floss to start, and I do that kind of informally by just pulling the thread, the floss out, oops, to my elbow. And that usually ends up being about the right size. So this is 6-strand embroidery floss. I don't want it to fray, but I don't know if you can see that there are, maybe I'll just fray it so you can see, there are 6 different strands wound together there of embroidery floss. When you're doing embroidery, you can use 1 strand at a time, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, whatever you need, depending on how thick of a line you want to make. So, but just to get started, we're going to just stick with all 6 strands all together. And I got a couple ideas on how to thread your needle. So what I do, kind of old-fashioned and unhygienic, is just to lick it. And then I like to take, after I lick it, I like to snip the edge so I get a nice straight cut. And instead of trying to push the thread through the needle, I like to try to needle the thread so I can keep the thread in between my pointer and my thumb, and then kind of just bring the needle down onto the thread and pull it through that way. So if you're having trouble getting your needle through the thread that way, or if you don't want to lick your thread. There's some products that you can use. This is called Thread Heaven. This is a beeswax thread conditioner that I got from someone on Etsy. And they're both kind of waxy products that you can just put your thread on, hold your finger on top of it, and then pull. I think the main intention of these products is to pull your thread all the way through and condition your whole thread. That way it goes through your project more smoothly. I don't necessarily use that all that much. I don't really have that much trouble with my thread going through smoothly. Unless I get some bum thread, then sometimes I'll use this. But it's really great for just doing your ends, to give them a nice little condition, a little bit of wax to sort of hold everything together for you to be able to thread easier. If you don't want to buy these kinds of products, you can use just a regular candle, any old candle from around the house. Same thing, you just put your finger pretty firmly on top of the thread and then pull it through maybe once or twice, and it'll coat that end with some wax, and you can just smooth it out. And again, give it a little snip to get a nice crisp edge on it. And then hopefully that will help you get it right through your needle. One other way to get your needle threaded is to use a needle threader. A lot of people have seen these little needle threaders that come in like a sewing kit or something like that. This is meant for a much thinner thread than this embroidery floss. If you could even get this to work with embroidery floss, you wouldn't get it to work very many times. This little fragile bit would break with this heavy thread. I have found that these can work. I don't use them very often, but if you're looking for a needle threader, the way this one works is you put the hook through the eye of the needle and then loop your thread around it and then pull it through. And that works pretty well. So now we've got our needle threaded. We need a knot at the end of our thread. So there's two different things that you can do here. You can either leave this tail from where you threaded it and tie a knot at the end and have a single strand of, or a single group of strands of embroidery floss for your project. Or if you want a thicker line, or if as you're working, you're finding that when you're pulling your stitches through your fabric, you're pulling your needle off your thread and having to rethread your needle a lot, and you don't want to have to worry about that, then you can take the two ends and put them together and put your knot at the end with both ends together. Then you'll have doubled your floss. I like to use just one, so I'm going to put the knot at the end of just one end. And the way that I do knots, everybody does it a little bit differently, and it's good to check out different ways to do knots and see which way is most comfortable for you. But for me, I like to lick my finger and then put the thread on top of my finger, my pointer finger, and then hold it down with my thumb. Wrap it around one time, and then I'm going to use my thumb to slide that off my finger, and as it starts to roll, I'm going to use my other fingers to pull that knot down to the bottom of the thread. I'm going to snip that off and show that one more time. Little lick. Lay the floss on top of my pointer finger, hold it with my thumb on top, so it's about halfway across my finger. Wrap it around one time, and I'm going to use my thumb to roll it off my finger, and you see that thread is starting to intertwine and knot up. And I'm going to put my fingers at the end and pull it down. Now this knot didn't go all the way down to the end. There's a lot of tail hanging off of that. I would probably snip some of that off. You want a little bit hanging off of there, but not too much. If there's too much, it'll get in the way. It might get sucked into some of your other stitches. But if it's too short or too close to the knot, your knot could unravel. So you just want to leave a little bit of space. And then you are all set and ready to embroider. One thing that you can do with your floss once you get it started, sometimes, especially when you start using it a lot, these little labels fall off and then your thread can get tangled. So what I like to do is wrap the thread around a clothespin, and then I just put the end of the thread, I put one end inside of here, and then the other end I leave hanging in the clip so that it doesn't come undone. And what's nice about these is you can look on here at the number. This is color number 340. So you could write on your clothespins, this is anchor 340. If you run out of that floss, you'll know what color number it is and how you can get more of it if you need more.